And then I was just telling Steve, my total vision is to have. We're live now. Hey, everybody! What's up, burners? It's me, Big Boned. I'm here with Steve. I'm here with Tyler, aka Raider Damas, and Steve Lawson 93 on Twitter. We're just hanging out. We're gonna do the Monday Meltdown thing. We'll go over some things that we already knew that happened over the football weekend, things that were surprising, people, players not to give up on. We got the you asshole segment and our asshole of the week. And if we get people to stick around at the end, we'll do a mock draft of something silly like a cocktail or some kind of food. Tacos is always fun, that kind of thing. So I'm going to hit the intro and let's get it going. Woo! And we're in this thing. And Tyler, I have to throw in my shot of me at the very last game at Oakland Coliseum, just for you know, just because we gotta we gotta represent. That was a
Absolutely.
terrible day. Christmas
It was not
Eve,
a good game.
no. Christmas Eve, we lost to the Chargers. It wasn't fun. I'm sorry, Steve. Let me see if I can adjust. I don't know if I can adjust this.
I'm getting the Mike Wazowski treatment from Monsters Inc. You know what I mean? Like I got like the logo over me.
Sometimes
Um,
I can switch them.
but
Let
that's
me do
okay.
that.
Honestly, I
Okay.
don't think people are tuning in for my face.
You're good. Nobody's tuning in anyway. Okay. This is better though, because I'll take the lower quadrant because I'm seated lower. I'm not short by any means. So
I am.
real quickly, I want to welcome Steve. Raider Damas has been on the channel with me before. Steve, you're brand new. I saw your bat signal on Twitter saying that you wanted to participate in some stuff, and I want people participating in stuff. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been doing fantasy football kind of stuff, how long you've been playing, how long you've been, if you're content creating, where do you do that, how long you've been doing that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So I started. I got into fantasy football in college. So I'm getting up there now. So I just turned. So probably 10 years ago, I got into fantasy football. And I started doing content creation about 3 years ago. I started getting onto Twitter a little bit, and then kind of found my footing. I started out with Fansided, uh, worked there, kind of built an audience that way, and then kind of found a niche by um, representing LGBTQ people, like in trying to bring some sort of like light and understanding to that, and realizing that we can all kind of enjoy this game together. And then I kind of went through this process, went through everything going on for a couple of years, and now I'm with IBT Media. I just started there. I'm their new social media guy. I run I'm part of their entertainment section. So I'll talk about movies and TV shows and music and stuff like that. And then on my Twitter, you'll see me talk a lot about a bunch of different things. But fantasy football will always have a place in my heart. If you keep seeing me look this way, I have the game on
Yeah.
immediately to my left. Yeah, I just am super excited to be here. I did send up the bat signal because I do love talking about fantasy football so much, and just the NFL in general. So, and everything else. I just love to talk. ADHD people unite. We love to.
Yes, sir.
We love to hear it.
You're right in my wheelhouse. You hit ADHD. I've got my ally bracelet on right here. I was going to put my Raiders LGBTQPIP plus pennant that I have, which is the LGBTQ flag with the Raiders logo on it.
Oh, that's
I
a
was
cool
going to put
flag.
it up, but I forgot because I have ADD and I came down here at the last minute. What is what does IBT stand for?
So that's In Between Media. So IBT is the In Between Media Network, and it's a pretty small team, but it's an amazing team of people. And the reason it's in between is because it's fantasy football, it's entertainment, it's everything in between. We don't like to like be locked into one form of entertainment or media or anything like that. And Seth, who kind of started this whole thing, Seth Wilcock on Twitter, is such a cool guy. He's so passionate. He just had such a love for what he was doing that I couldn't help but sign on. And so that's kind of how I got with them. And, we've been working together for a little bit of time here, and it's been a blast.
Nice. Well, Tyler's been on with me a couple times, and we do. If I only have one guest, or if I'm doing like my normal interview-ish kind of show, I do a power rankings, not a draft. And in the power rankings, we've gone over music. I had another guest on that. Well, maybe it was. Did we go over movies? Somebody went over movies with me.
Yeah, we did the last time I was on with
Somebody did
you.
movies. The lost episode. Um, I'm an
Yeah.
actor, writer. I write screenplays. I write sketch comedy. I perform in a
Oh, right
sketch
on.
group. So I'm all about like all of the different facets of entertainment. I'm like a diamond. I have all these different facets about me. Um, and yeah, so that's like right in my wheelhouse. So it's good to have you on. Good to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you. I also do some acting too and writing. So that's so funny. Like,
And
I
where are
feel
you
like I'm
at?
with my people. I'm out in Boston. I mostly have done stage acting. I've gone on sets a couple times, but nothing like too crazy. Just like a lot of background work. But I do musicals mostly. And yeah, it's been a blast. So I love acting, love being both on stage or in the writer's chair. So
Yeah, that's funny because I joined this sketch troupe. I had always been into films. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a director. I was on the path to do my college transfer, my community college transfer to UC Berkeley, and get a degree in rhetoric with an emphasis on film. I wanted to make poignant, messagey movies,
I love
and
that.
so you had a tweet today talking about the elements that you always install in your writing, and it
Yeah.
it kind of hit home for me. So that was my intent, was to like I wanted to use films to like make people agree with me politically, I guess. And so I wound up like getting married and becoming a psychiatric counselor instead.
Oh,
So
right
fast
on.
forward my mid 30s, and my buddy wants to be an actor, and he's like, I need a ride to my acting classes, and I don't have a car. Do you want to take me? I know that you're into it. So I got into it with him, and then immediately within, I don't know, an hour of sitting there, all of this creative energy that had been suppressed for 20 years came like
it,
spewing
it
out of me.
floods, right? It just like
Yeah.
it does. It like when you get hit with that inspiration, it's like it's unreal,
I
truly unreal.
I joined the sketch troupe. I joined an improv class. I started doing like commercials, auditioning, just like everywhere that I could. I wrote a screenplay. I started putting together an independent feature that I've been trying to produce for a couple years
Oh
through a
my
lot of
god.
um, hazards and COVID and all that stuff. COVID shut everything down. Um, but yeah, it was like everything just kind of exploded out of me all at once. And so yeah, it's I absolutely love that, like that part of life. It's like I'm a new person, and so yeah. All right, and we've we've got Tyler back.
Sorry, I had to change out my headphones. They died on me, and I had to get my backup pair.
No worries. So Raider Damas, let a tell us what the great beyond told you about Sunday's Raiders Patriots game, and on the how did that
Well,
go?
he basically told me that the Patriots were terrible, which they are, and that the Raiders were going to squeak one out but not score 20 points, which very nearly happened. He told me the score would be 16-10, which it was around the end of the third quarter, and then the teams just sort of kept scoring. So I wasn't exactly right on the final score. I was close. But in the middle of the third quarter, I was like, it was 16-10. I was like, geez, are they just going to trade punts the rest of the game and I'm going to be completely correct? Because that would be insane. I haven't been completely correct on the score since I think like 2013. I did it
Wow.
once then. Uh, against the Cardinals of all teams, and I was like, this is going to be really, really close here. But I came out on top. Raider Damas is 4-1 on the season as far as correcting the games or being correct on predicting the games. So
Nice.
it was a really really good game. I'm glad to see that the Raiders came out on top.
Yeah,
I
I don't know
really
if you got to see my my panel that I posted, but I got Max taking down Mac Jones in the for the safety to finish everything off. That was I love Max Crosby moments. They're my favorite moments. If
It is
it's
fun to
yeah.
watch.
I
yeah, if
remember we used to have Khalil Mack moments, and
yeah,
we traded him, and then we drafted Max Crosby, and haven't really missed a lot of production because they've been pretty similar
no, but
as
we
far as
also
I
had
can
to
tell.
watch 6 Khalil Mack moments against us in week one.
We did, but the Broncos had to watch that once too.
Yeah.
I remember that game.
We all saw Chiefs and Broncos on Thursday night, which was surprisingly closer than it should have been. Um, the Patriots are down bad. The Broncos are down bad, which leads us, or leads me anyway, because I have this stuff. All right, it's time for all right. So in the dust segment, we go over some things that happened that we kind of figured were going to happen. They weren't surprising at all to us, and in the world of the NFL and fantasy football, I do have in my description that I like to recap a little bit. I have the low winter sun like right in my face. I do like to recap what happened in the college football game, and that Washington Oregon game was one of the greatest games I've ever seen. And I tweeted at one point, if Michael Penix Jr. is not the Las Vegas quarterback next year, there is malfeasance and criminal activity afoot. And
I
Wow.
the only reason he wouldn't be is if the Raiders win too many games for no reason at all, and he just goes top 10. Because people have been talking about Caleb Williams and Drake May for 2 years now, and they deserve to be talked about. But right now, Michael Penix is a better football player than
yeah,
either one of them. In fact, I think he's the best quarterback on the board. He's a little older, and he has some durability issues. I'll give you that, and that might make some teams shy away. Uh, but I don't think anybody who needs a quarterback should pass on him if he's available. He's
right.
just too good. He's too accurate. His deep ball is just absolutely perfect. I mean, there were not that you can count on probably one hand the amount of quarterbacks who would have beaten Oregon on Saturday. And he just made throw after throw after throw after throw. And they say there's no defense for a perfect throw. Well, he did it a dozen times.
Yeah,
And
and
as
he
a
did it
huge
without
Ducks
Jalen
fan as I
McMillan.
am, I still have to tip my cap because the guy was a baller at Indiana. I watched him beat Ohio State basically by himself because there was not a whole lot of talent on that Indiana team. There's a lot of talent on the Washington team he's on currently, and I suspect they could make the playoffs. I suspect they probably will win the Pac-12.
At this point, it's looking like it. And the other thing to remember about Penix is he didn't have Jalen McMillan with him. It was just the Roma Dunze show. He hit the tight end a bunch. Bo Nix could have done it. I mean, it's not like Oregon was totally out of that game. Um, I'm pretty sure that Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Penix, and Drake May are the top four quarterbacks at this point. May is definitely the youngest one. I've known from the moment I saw him as a freshman. I was like, this guy is NFL legit. And Caleb's been around and Bo's been around, but I like Penix.
I agree.
I gotta tell you, like, so I do in terms of the NFL draft. One thing, like one position I usually look at and say I feel like I'm good at like analyzing that is quarterback. Bo Nix to me is not an NFL quarterback. Like I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Like he's not a thrower he's not a passer. You know what I mean? Like his passes are so line of scrimmage based. You're not going to get him to read the field, and I just don't see him being a worthwhile pick. But I think one quarterback that's not being talked about at all draft wise, even though nationally in the college football world he's doing well. And this is a homer thing. I went to this school, but I believe it anyways. Jordan Travis for Florida State.
Yeah.
needs to get some love in the draft world
Yeah.
because, like, what he's able to do is special, and his accuracy has improved, his reading has improved. He's running a good system. I think I would take him before I took Bo Nix.
I have him in Debbie, and I love Jordan Travis. I was not a Bo Nix fan. I was a Bo Nix detractor until he got to Oregon. And the changes that I saw him make in his gameplay last season caused me to kind of perk up. Now, I don't see him as a first round quarterback talent that we typically see coming out in the first round. Um, I see him more more along the lines of kind of where Derek Carr was when he came out of Fresno State, where he's going to be a second rounder, he's going to be a third rounder, and he should be capable as he kind of goes through the NFL progression. He's not a guy that if I'm a team that needs a QB1 that is going to start on day one, like with CJ Stroud, um, or God, my brain just goes blank sometimes. The kid from Carolina that went to Alabama.
Bryce Young.
God damn it. Um, he's not like that. Like Drake May is going to start day one for somebody, even though
Yeah.
I think he is less. He's good, but I think you want somebody that runs more. And Bo Nix runs, so I can't say that. Anyway, I don't think he's that like top five quarterback talent. But I mean, if somebody takes a chance on him late in the first round, in the second round, and he doesn't start right away, I think he can put it together. He's shown that he can adapt his game and learn what is he's coachable. And at a certain point in the NFL, you really really need that. I know that Tyler has watched a whole lot more Bo Nix than I have.
I watched quite a bit. Yeah,
And your
I think Nix has a stronger arm than he's given credit for. I think he has a really good deep ball, and I think he's got some touch on his deep ball. I think he's really accurate. I think he's incredibly intelligent. He's adaptable to whatever scheme you want to put him in. Unfortunately, I think he's been let down by his coaching quite a bit. Some of the choices that Dan Lanning made against Washington this year and last year were completely indefensible. The coaching at Auburn that he received was completely atrocious. Now, as we know, coaching in football, you have some good ones and you have mostly complete idiots. So there's no guarantee that any team that drafts him is going to have someone competent as a quarterbacks coach or as a head coach or even an offensive coordinator. You can't guarantee that. But if he goes to somebody like, let's say he backs up Josh Allen with the Bills, like Matt Barkley has done. Now he's never going to start over Josh Allen, but he can sit there for a couple years, learn, and go somewhere else and be a starter. I don't think he's the type of guy where he's going to come in and start immediately, as you said. He just doesn't. He hasn't had the opportunity to show that he can make those kind of NFL throws people are looking for. But I mean, if we look at around the league, Josh Jacobs is a starting quarterback in this league. Jimmy Garoppolo is a starting quarterback in this league. At that talent level, you can be a starting quarterback in this league if called upon. Bo Nix is better than that. And I think he can be an awful lot better than that. And I think he's in this draft, that's about where you stop as far as if you're worse than Bo Nix, you're probably not going to be a starter in this league. And I'm talking about the Spencer Rattlers of the world.
oh yeah,
If you're better than Bo Nix, you're a starter. And if you're not, then you're not. And that's fine. You can still carve out a 10-year career doing, being basically Blaine Gabbert and doing whatever. And, you could be a backup for 10 years and make $60 billion and carry a clipboard and not have to do anything and not have your head scrambled and retire and God bless you.
right.
Uh,
And then go
but
commentate.
yeah, you can do an awful lot of things and it's fine. You can not have massive brain damage and, good on you for that. And that's about where Bo Nix is. He can start if given a good opportunity with good coaching to do so. He's just not the kind of guy who's going to come in and save a floundering franchise.
Well, this is a perfect opportunity for a plug. One of my hometown heroes, JT O'Sullivan, he and John Shoemaker in the late '90s at UC Davis, they were a formidable D2 FBS 1AA team, and JT O'Sullivan got drafted, jumped around the league. I think he played at one point for 12 different teams. played for the Raiders one preseason. He's a UC Davis legend. He's got a YouTube channel called the QB School, and it is phenomenal. He does from
I've watched
somebody
quite a
who
bit
knows
on there.
quarterbacks. He does breakdowns of quarterback play, mechanics, decision making, stuff like that. So if any of you viewer wants to expand your knowledge on quarterback analysis, watch the QB School, JT O'Sullivan on YouTube. It's really good.
Desmond Ritter is a starting quarterback right now in the NFL. If Bo
Yeah, and
Nix
he had
can't be better
300
than
something
Desmond
yards
Ritter, then what are we doing here?
Two wrongs don't make a right, though. Let's be real.
Right.
I know that,
that's-
but this is the state of our sport. This is how it is.
But
And
Desmond
if
Ritter
Bo,
shouldn't be starting. Desmond Ritter
he
should
shouldn't, but
not be
he is.
starting
That's my
anyway.
point. Yeah, he absolutely shouldn't be starting right now, but he is. That's what I'm saying.
Right,
There's
but you don't want
somebody.
to.
Arthur Smith made the decision. Desmond
I
Ritter is
think
good enough to
Desmond Ritter is
start.
actually a very good comp to Bo Nix.
Well, he's a starting quarterback, so we can't say that Bo Nix can't be one.
But he's not.
Right.
Like, he just is by, like, default. Like, honestly.
There's only
they
32 of the jobs, and somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, but, like, let's be real, right? Jameis Winston should be a starting quarterback right now, and he's not. Taylor Heineke should be starting for the Falcons right now. He's not. You're looking around the league, and there's plenty of quarterbacks who shouldn't be starting, but because of either franchises hoarding a couple starting quarterbacks or just a lack of talent evaluation, they wind up stuck with these guys like Daniel Jones or Desmond Ritter or
Draft
Baker
capital,
Mayfield,
contracts, there's
or
a lot.
like you're just looking at all these players throughout the league that are just
Yeah.
awful, truly
But that's
terrible.
how that's
And
sunk
I'm not
cost
going to burn a
fallacy.
first round pick on Bo Nix to be stuck in that same position that the Steelers are with Kenny Pickett.
It remains to be seen if somebody will. It's just that the guys you mentioned, especially Daniel Jones, who I think is an excellent example of what we're talking about here, is a perfect example of the sunk cost fallacy. We are paying this guy so much money that it doesn't matter if he sucks. We have to start him anyway, or we look like idiots. Now, we can say whether the Giants coaching staff are idiots anyway. Based on their performance this year, we can't say too many good things about them. But guys like that, I mean, they're really, if we're talking about elite quarterbacks, there's about 10 dudes in the whole world. But there are 32 teams. So 20 guys who kind of suck have to be starting quarterbacks in the NFL at any given time. So these middling quarterback prospects that we're talking about, they're going to get a chance somewhere. Somebody is going to ask them to do it.
Right, but do you want to be the franchise that hands out a first-round pick to Bo Nix? Because that's where he's going to go. He's going to go in the
My
first
team
round.
is starting Jimmy Garoppolo right now. I can't say shit to you, man.
But, like, that doesn't make you better. You know what I mean? Like, if the Raiders burnt a first-round pick on Bo Nix, are you happy?
No, I'd rather them spend a first-round pick on Mason Smith from LSU, the defensive tackle. No matter where they're picking in the first round. And I would rather have them start the guy they drafted last year, who I don't know if he can be great. I think he can be good. But if you're not taking Caleb, Drake May, or Michael Penix, I wouldn't spend a first round on a quarterback this year
Right.
for my team personally.
I also wouldn't draft Michael Penix in the first round, but that's my hot take.
Yeah, and it's that is a
After
hot
the
take.
Oregon game, that's a pretty hot take.
Right.
He's. You know what? Honestly, I have a very strange approach to the NFL draft in general, especially the quarterback position. If it was up to me, honestly, and this is my truest, if I was the GM of the team that had the number 1 overall pick, I'd trade it.
Yes, absolutely.
It's probably going to be the Bears, and they may just well do that. Let me
I would
ask
trade
you
it because
though.
you're going to get a king's ransom for that one this year.
Tell me about a guy that nobody thought was going to be great, but you thought was going to be great, and turned out they were great.
Like a quarterback or just any player?
Yeah. You say you like to evaluate quarterbacks. Tell me about that.
I
Who do you think was going to be awesome?
So a QB that I thought was going to be awesome that wound up being, I can do it a lot more with guys who I thought were going to be terrible that wound up being terrible.
We all can.
Tell me about that too. I want to hear about that too.
So one guy that I really was out on, like from the word go, was Marcus Mariota. He was someone who I immediately was like, I wouldn't draft him. I don't believe in him. And I didn't believe in Carson Wentz. I was a big Carson Wentz detractor. I didn't believe in him. And early on, he was proving me wrong. And then the league adjusted to him, and I was proven right. Trey Lance, I said, was bad. There have been guys I've missed on, and I'm still not out on Justin Fields, but I went on the record and said I would take Justin Fields first overall in that class over Trevor Lawrence, over everybody. That was my guy. But as far as guys who fell and I thought could be really good, coming out, I started getting into like watching college football because I grew up an Ohio State fan because my family is Ohio State fans. So I got to watch a lot of college football and some guys that I just really believed in were that was kind of a crazy throw. Uh, I was a fan of like Derek Carr coming out, and he wound up being fine. I thought he was really good for a while, and then something happened that he fell apart.
He broke
Um,
his leg and also his back.
Yeah, and his
yeah, and like I don't know if he got like the yips or afraid of being hit now, and he's kind of just doesn't look like the guy anymore.
Well, he's had terrible offensive lines the last 2 years and coaching changes and blah blah. He's never had consistency with offensive coordinators. He has had a long road. The thing about him is his understanding of NFL defenses and his grit and determination in carrying a team. Those are the best things about him. He throws a good deep ball. We saw that yesterday, but his systems and defenses have always held him back, and that argument is getting louder and louder and louder because of where Jimmy Garoppolo is, the comparison to the two of them, all that kind of stuff. But back to your Ohio State story.
Yeah. So I grew up in Ohio State family, wound up going to Florida State, and like I had gotten into Ohio State, betrayed my family, betrayed the bloodline, went to Florida State instead. And so like I'm a Jameis guy. I'll believe in Jameis till the day I die. But like I swung and missed. But for me, evaluating quarterbacks really comes down to often who don't I want. I can't sit here and tell you I thought Mahomes was going to be Patrick Mahomes. I thought he'd be good. I didn't think he'd be this good, but it really is about looking at the competition they play, looking at the way they play, and is it replicable at a level where guys are a step or two faster? Are you getting that production because your wide receiver is Mike Evans? Hey, Johnny Manziel. Or are you creating superstars instead? So there's a lot of players that I think haven't gotten um, that got a lot of hype that I didn't see and didn't understand why. And
Yeah,
I often think like these high draft picks, like you're burning so much for a quarterback when you could trade back because three good players are better than one average quarterback in this league. I mean, throw a rock, you'll hit seven of them, right? But like, you can't find these gems, these Micah Parsons and all these guys that are going at 10, 11, 12, 13, that are just so good. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
Jalen
crazy to
Carter.
me that these teams are trading the world for a quarterback. Bryce Young is a perfect example of a guy that because it was a quarterback, he wasn't even that good. Like in this year's class, he'd be like the fourth best quarterback. The Panthers could have just sat for a year and waited and gotten a better option, but they traded the world for Bryce Young. And
Well, the
that
Panthers
blows
were
my
also
mind.
sold recently to a new owner, and I don't think he wanted to wait. I think he wanted to make a big splash, and Bryce Young just happened to be available in the year he wanted to make a splash. I don't necessarily think that was the best move, especially for the Panthers. Like I think they'd be way better off having completely tanked this season and took Caleb Williams.
Right.
Or taking
And
CJ Stroud, who was a better
Yeah,
prospect than Bryce
CJ
Young
Stroud or
anyway.
Anthony Richardson. Like, but we knew but
That's who
going
should
in
have been the number one pick,
that, that
honestly.
Bryce Young had the head for it, and Anthony Richardson had the body for it, and CJ Stroud had the talent for it. Like we knew these things, and somehow through Carolina's scouting process, they fell in love with Bryce Young. And I had so many conversations with people where I was like, there's no way I'm taking Bryce Young as the number one quarterback. There's like
if
that's
you
just
put
There was
C.J.
no
Stroud's head on Anthony Richardson's body, you have a Black John Elway, and that could have made the Panthers something. But those are two different
right.
guys, and you can't take them both.
And
And they took neither one.
I think too often NFL teams, I don't know whether it's media, I don't know whether it's the contract environment at this point, but NFL teams put far too much stock in the quarterback position and don't build their team, and they focus on quarterback. And the
right.
Raiders are a perfect example of that. They have focused more on offensive pieces and other things than building an offensive line, which is traditionally the the main thing that you did to start an organization. The Cowboys did it, the 49ers did it. teams did it. That's how you build a team, is you focus on the offensive line. If you focus on quarterback first and he leads the league in sacks, like Sam Howell, who is one guy that I was higher on than everybody else, and he's turning out to be pretty damn good. Um, that's a recipe for disaster. Daniel Jones is another one. Like, a guy needs protection in addition to the learning curve, and that just, you don't see that anymore with quarterbacks. It doesn't happen. They get thrust into it from the first preseason that they're in camp, and that's it.
I also think that there is this situation with quarterbacks and young quarterbacks coming into the league. You cannot, and oftentimes we see a new young quarterback come into a new head coach, right? And that's usually how it goes because the team's so bad, you kind of just clean house and start over. But you can't do this thing that a lot of teams are doing, and CJ Stroud is going to be everyone's argument against this. But too many players are coming into the league into defensive minded guys' schemes and failing. I would never, ever hire a defensive coordinator as my head coach. Ever. Not once. Because it doesn't usually work.
It is a
They
relic of the past.
like this idea, and I have kind of been on the Belichick is overrated train for a long time. And living in Boston, that is a bugaboo, right? Like that's a big no-no. That's a very taboo thing to say. Or it was.
Not anymore.
But now we're seeing it that all of a sudden you don't have the greatest football player to ever walk the earth saving your franchise. And now your coaching and team building are being exposed as being subpar. Without Tom Brady, Bill Belichick is significantly, throughout his career, a sub 500 coach.
Yeah, Steve, I've been on that same exact train for about a month now.
Yeah.
That Tom Brady has gotten head coaches jobs when all they should be doing is getting coffee for Bill Parcells. These people are the Charlie Weisses of the world, the Romeo Cornells of the world. Yeah, Tom Brady made those people. Josh McDaniels, Tom Brady made him. Josh McDaniels ain't shit right now. I mean, he's
Right.
okay, but he's not, what an NFL head coach should be. Really creative leader of men. Responsible for what the
I
team
think
is
that's
doing.
McDaniel's biggest problem is that he's just a shit leader.
He's an asshole. Nobody likes him.
That's the thing. Like,
They
If you've
they
ever had
talk
a
they talk
player-
like they do. They tell the media they do, but Josh McDaniels is an absolute shitheel, and you can't tell me that the good, upstanding men in the Raiders locker room like him, because I fucking know.
the perfect dichotomy is McDaniels and McDaniel. If you've ever had a my way or the highway manager, you know that you do not buy into that system. You look at McDaniel in Miami, and he's a best friend manager. He happens to be a genius, but he's also a guy who will go put his arm around Tua and be like, let's go have drinks. Josh McDaniels is the opposite, and people are not going to follow him and buy into whatever system he is. But I do want to backtrack a little bit. You confused me really hard there, because I was like, Jerry Rice never played for the Patriots. Sorry, Oakland Raiders legend Jerry Rice never played for the Patriots. Anyway,
mhm.
Like me,
all right.
Seattle Seahawks legend Jerry Rice. What are you talking about?
That's true too. All right.
Did he play
So,
with Buccaneers legend Tim Brown for a few seasons there?
did Tim Brown play for Tampa?
Yeah, in his last season he did. Before
How did I
retiring.
miss that?
That was a crazy punt.
That's crazy. Hall of Famer Tim Brown. All right.
That was a
So-
little before my time, I think. I wasn't really old enough to remember football when Jerry Rice finished up.
Which is funny because he played for 40 years.
Yeah, what year did he retire?
It was 2003 ish, 2004.
Yeah, he played his last season with the Seahawks and then called it quits.
So I was like 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not that young.
I was
All right.
born in '84, so I was sat in front of the TV for his entire career.
Are we
Yeah.
74, 84, 94 here?
93, but yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I just turned 30, so.
Yeah, my oldest son is about to turn 30 in December. Okay, so Tyreek Hill. Holy crap. Guy came out and said, I'm gonna receive 2,000 yards this year, and wouldn't you know it, he's doing it. we knew Tyreek was gonna ball out. Um, I think he's even surprising us to a certain extent, but god damn, that guy that guy is so good. And just goes to show that he made Patrick Mahomes, not the other way around. All right.
Oof, that's
Takes.
a take.
That is
Oh,
quite the take.
so
I
this
don't even know what to say to that.
this is a
Didn't
this is
Mahomes win a Super Bowl last year without Tyreek Hill on his
this is a
roster?
long form conversation that I have with a guy on Twitter. It's slander SZN slander season, who's a fellow Raiders fans, and he is a Chiefs fan troll. So he goes and he trolls Chiefs fans,
Ah.
and I popped into one of his trolls and I said Patrick Mahomes doesn't elevate anybody, and he was like, "That's what I've been trying to say." Now, he doesn't make players better. He's a system quarterback. He just happens to play for one of the best systems and have talent around him. So, with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, he was dominant offensively. With the Andy Reid system and the defensive scheming and what he's able to do off platform, he's a winner. He's a top 2, top 3 fantasy quarterback. He's production wise, he's one of those top quarterbacks. To me, he's the most physically talented quarterback in all aspects of the game that I've ever seen, but he doesn't necessarily make the guys around him better. That's that's all I'm saying.
My argument against Patrick Mahomes being a system quarterback. Now I'm no Chiefs fan, obviously, by the jersey that I'm wearing here. Would be this: when Andy Reid was the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, his defensive coordinator was Jim Johnson, and they consistently put out a top 10 defense every single year, and yet they did not win the Super Bowl with Donovan McNabb. And yet he goes to Kansas City, has a subpar defense most of the time, and has won two. So that would be my argument against system quarterback BS when talking about Mahomes.
Right.
Does he make everyone else better? No, but he's good enough where that doesn't fucking matter.
Right. That's that's kind of my point. And it's kind of tongue in cheek and it's kind of like made to be a hot take. But
It's like I can get behind it to some degree. I don't think he's. I think a lot of times he does things that a lot of guys can do, and the commentators and ESPN and blah 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 blow it up like a
Chris
little out of
Collinsworth.
proportion. Like yeah, Chris Collinsworth. Like there are I think why Mahomes is starting to get that feel to him that he is the system is because the league is just so hell bent on selling him as this I've never seen anything like him before, which
because
we
he
have.
wasn't.
But we have seen guys like Patrick Mahomes, and the last guy who was a lot like Patrick Mahomes was named Brett Favre, and that's essentially what Patrick Mahomes is he's not a passer, he's not he's a thrower, right? He's just an elite thrower of the football, and he can sling it. And what happened is he landed in a situation that is perfect for him because Andy Reid does build his offense to the strengths. We saw Alex Smith go to Kansas City under Andy Reid and put up stupid numbers. Andy Reid is an offensive genius. He's going to get the best out of you. And I think Patrick Mahomes wound up going to a situation that allowed him to develop into this human highlight reel. And that is why Patrick Mahomes is able to do the things he's able to do is because Andy Reid facilitated that growth that gave him that swagger. It's a lot like Steph Curry in the NBA.
Right. And the opposite of Josh McDaniels.
Right. They
Yeah.
encourage them to do this, right? You encourage these guys to kind of do these weird things. And Mike McDaniel is doing that a lot in Miami now, right? And it's not usually with Tua, but it's more with like Tyreek and with the players, right? It's like, oh, if you see something off that will work better, just go off script and make it happen.
Yeah.
Like Tyreek Hill
McDaniels
scored a
makes
touchdown because
his
he ran the
players.
wrong route.
McDaniels make his players actively worse, which I think is the worst part of having him.
Right.
as head
Because
coach.
Mike McDaniel or Josh McDaniels runs it as if like if you go slightly off script, he runs it like Belichick, right? You cannot deviate from what is
Right.
called.
And it got Derek Carr ran out of town when the year before Derek Carr took the Raiders to the playoffs with Rich Bisaccia as the head coach, because Bisaccia was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Derek, go out there and win me some games. And he rattled off 4 in a row and took them to the playoffs from
Well, Derek
from a
spent 3 seasons doing that same thing at Fresno State. He won all those games more or less by himself.
yeah.
Him and Devontae Adams together, but he would just go out there and throw for 400, 450, because he didn't have a defense. He barely had an offensive line. He didn't have any weapons except for Adams. He just went out there and just threw the ball.
And he
And
needed a situation in the NFL like Andy Reid, who's
yeah,
like, okay, these are your strengths. What are we going to do? We're going to call plays at the line. We're not going to send one in, and you can't deviate from it. I
if Derek Carr had been put in Josh Allen's position, he'd have won 2 Super Bowls by now. I'll tell you that.
yeah. I mean, the here's the thing, and part of why I love my Patrick
Wait.
Mahomes.
What?
I'm about to use that.
I'm so confused as to what you just said.
He's saying Derek Carr was more talented in Josh Allen's first couple years than Josh Allen was, with a better team around. Josh Allen had a better team around him. Okay, one of the things that I love about my Patrick Mahomes argument is that all of these arguments are so nebulous that all you have to do is just find little paths around what people are trying to say or around dogma and just start picking, and it creates conversations like this.
Sure.
And I don't want to take anything away from Patrick Mahomes. He is one of the greatest quarterbacks I've ever seen. But when you start breaking it down and look at the reasons for that, it's because when he gets in trouble, he's physically able to escape trouble.
Yep.
And he's given the latitude to do crazy things that are coached out of players. Don't throw off platform. Don't throw on the run or off your back foot, like off your front foot. Don't throw sidearm, things like that. He's allowed to do those things. It's not like there aren't other guys that aren't, it's not like other guys aren't capable of that stuff. It's just, it tends to be coached out of people, and he's been allowed to thrive. And
I think it's because he doesn't do the fundamentals well. We watched that with the Jets. When the Jets said, we're just going to keep you in the pocket and make you throw against us, he didn't look very good.
yeah.
Well, that's not his game, though. The Jets
It's not.
did that
That's what I'm
because
saying.
the
He's
Jets
not a
did-
passer.
Yeah, the Jets did that because it works. Because when you
That's how you beat
take
Patrick
him-
Mahomes.
exactly,
And the Raiders,
did a
the
really,
last
really
time
good
the
job of
Raiders
it.
won, last time the Raiders beat the Chiefs, they did the same thing. They haven't done it since, but
And that's really the only way you can, because if you let Patrick Mahomes get out of the pocket and improvise, he'll destroy you because you can't defend against it. There's
Justin
not
Herbert
enough
just-
guys on your there's not enough guys on your defense, not enough manpower to stop everything he can do, and all of his options that he has on every given play, he just can't do it.
right. And that was even like an even stronger case when Tyreek was there, because he had Tyreek who knew exactly what to do. They had that chemistry, and he has that with Kelsey, which is why you see them still continue to win. And the only target that he really has right now, because he lost his Tyreek, he didn't make Juju better last year, but Juju had Juju was in the right opportunities. He needs another Tyreek guy. I don't know if that's Rashee Rice, but he needs another guy like that, because while Travis Kelce can't be stopped, he also can't be the only option.
Well, the
He's
problem
going
with
to
that
get
is
old at some point.
Yeah.
there's about 5 guys in football as fast as Tyreek Hill is, and they're all on the Dolphins right now.
Right.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like Mike McDaniel looked at the NFL, looked at his offense, and said, "I just want guys who can run a 4.3 or below," and like that's what he does. He's like, if you're not a 4.3 something, you're not on the team. You don't have any spot. Like, get off.
They're
Like,
amazing to watch.
Right? He's like, we're just going to score points in a flash, and we see it happening, right? Like, what the Chiefs, I'm always surprised at the Chiefs not doing this, is like letting Mecole Hardman go and guys like that. I'm like, why are you letting these really fast players go when your team is predicated on these really fast players? And we are seeing Patrick Mahomes look awfully human this year. And people don't want to admit that he looks human this year, but he does. He looks average. He looks fine. The Chiefs just happen to be winning. But
the narrative becomes, what's wrong with Patrick Mahomes, and not why is Patrick Holmes playing like everybody else right now?
Right. There's
Stats
nothing
wise.
wrong with him. He's just
Right.
playing fine. So, fun fact: Justin Herbert completed a 10-yard pass to himself just a minute ago.
That's awesome. I don't root for the Cowboys, but
Oh, I promised my dad I would say this. We are anti-Cowboys right now.
good.
I'm against the Cowboys because my dad asked me to be. So okay,
Yeah.
boo.
Speaking of guys who elevate other players, Justin Herbert at
Oh
Oregon.
no.
Well,
Oh,
I'm
okay,
talking about
fine.
Oregon specifically.
Okay.
None of his receivers or any of his skill players really were drafted. Maybe a couple, maybe one or two of his running backs.
That's
But
because Mike McDaniel wasn't a head coach yet.
his receivers were all no-name guys. And he still won like
Were they?
2 Rose Bowls with, nothing basically at wide receiver. And he has a lot of running ability, and idiot Mario Cristobal didn't let him run the ball until the Rose Bowl, and he ran for like 150 yards and like 3 touchdowns. So that's a guy that, at least in college, made people a lot better than they were, and made them have a lot more numbers than they honestly deserved. Now, when he got to the Chargers, everybody around him was more or less the same as they were. He could just throw the ball a lot farther than who they'd had previously.
Yeah. And I want the Chargers to be are are they 2-3. So bad. Um I'll get to a little bit of that in a moment. Um oh, Parham couldn't hold on to the ball. We've also got a 4-0 game. The Phillies are absolutely boat racing the Diamondbacks right now in the National League Championship Series. So let's go Phils. Um, on the ledger, Mostert. So we've known for years that Raheem Mostert was a very capable, super fast running back,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just showing that at this point with a Chan's injury. That's even more apparent. Um, Adam Thielen.
Oh,
Now,
what a revival that is.
I want
We're
to
loving
say
that.
I had him in my starts column this week. That's on Substack. You can find the link in my Twitter profile at BigBonedFFB. Um, and one of the things I went through in the pre-draft season was in all of the mocks that I was doing, especially for the Fishbowl, I was taking Thielen often, because I'm thinking like he's a veteran guy. He's not done. He's got a rookie quarterback. He's going to be like the steady force on that in that offense. And then when it came to draft time, I was looking at that wide receiver room, and I just couldn't pull the trigger early enough on Thielen. People kept taking him over me. It's not like what Thielen is doing is that surprising. The fact that he's a top 10 wide receiver at this point is that surprising. But I knew he was going to be like the guy to own in that wide receiver core, right? I mean,
That was
just
my thought.
yeah,
By default, because there's not really a whole lot else.
right. Just the level that he's at in fantasy right now is kind of that's kind of surprising. But the,
I am definitely
the
reaping the rewards of Adam Thielen lately in a
yeah,
lot of leagues.
the fact that he's doing that isn't. Cooper Kupp is back. We knew he was going to slide right in, get those 10, 15 targets per game that Puka was getting.
I'm enjoying the resurgence of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow personally.
Burrow
Jamar
just had to
Chase
get
was,
healthy.
yeah, Jamar Chase on average was like the 4th overall pick in a lot of drafts.
Yeah,
And for the first like 3 or 4 games of the season, he did basically nothing.
right.
And then he had like a 4 touchdown game and got me like 45 points in the best ball league that I had him in. And I was like, well, here you are, Jamar. Where have you been, buddy? Thanks for coming back. So it's been nice to see Jamar and Joe and the Bengals turn back into what they were last year instead of a pumpkin.
And Chase will make his presence in an upcoming segment. Um, Travis Etienne, we knew he was going to be good. He had a really good week, and then finally, the Browns D. Browns defense is absolutely for real. Uh, Again, in my DynastyPros.com, DynastyProsFootball.com starts and sits weekend warm up. Shout out to Mike Lindbergh, my co-host. I said to sit Debo. I can't victory lap that one because he got hurt. But then in my Substack column, I said bench Ayuk. I was out on everybody except for McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. I even got a Jordan Mason touchdown. That Browns defense is so good, and we knew that coming into this game. It was just kind of nature to go ahead and sit your 49ers pass catchers, and that came to fruition.
Yeah, I just want to do a little breaking news here. It sounds like, according to Colts owner Jim Irsay, that Anthony Richardson will be done for the year.
Yeah,
That's brutal.
that perfect segment, perfect time because we're still in the segment. That was bad. So because of the lack of information that comes out of NFL uh, front offices, we didn't have a specific read on what was going to happen with Anthony Richardson. But there was a certain point where when we found out he went to get a second opinion, then they started talking about 4 to 8 weeks. When Derek Carr just suffered the same injury, he was back within a week. Drew Brees talked about suffering the same injury and being back within a week. If it's so bad that you're talking about surgery, you're talking about maybe missing 2 months, he's a rookie, just shut him down. Get him the jiu-jitsu instructor that Tua's been going to, and let him like live for another season.
Well, you see what it did to Cam Newton, right? Like, there's two ways of doing this, right? You can try to play through it, and Cam did that, and it ruined his career. And then you can do what Anthony Richardson's going to do, and just take the year, right? And so that is the smart
Oop, we got a freezer.
way to do it. It's brutal, honestly. To keep his career alive. Yeah, I want to see this dude healthy and see what he can become, because he could be Cam Newton 2.0.
Or he could be what we all think Patrick Mahomes is.
Yeah.
the
guy
good
Cam Newton 2.0. MVP Cam Newton.
Right. All right. Now it's time for What the fuck? Where we talk about things that happened that were pretty surprising over the weekend. So I'm going to start off with a trivia question for you guys. What do the Jets, Steelers, Browns, Bengals, Colts, Texans, Raiders, Commanders, Cowboys, pending tonight, Bucks, Falcons, Saints, Seahawks, and Rams all have in common?
Their win total?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
They're all 3-win teams.
Yeah.
That's a lot of 3-win teams.
That is so much parity. Now, to be fair, some of them are 3-2 because they had a bye week last week or this week, and they haven't had a chance to win that fourth game. But that is so much parity. It took me by surprise when I start looking at the standings and I see that the Raiders are somehow in second place in the AFC West, and all of these teams are right there. What's it going to take to get some of these teams into the playoffs? There are some that we assumed were going to be good. There are some that we assumed are going to be bad, and they're right there in the thick of things. It's only 6 weeks into the season. There's still 11 weeks to go, but what's happening?
A lot of bad quarterback play.
Yeah, a lot, and a lot of really good players getting hurt too. I think we can see both with the Colts right now. The Colts, if Anthony Richardson was at peak health, I think would be a decent team. But without him, they're more or less a disaster. I mean, with Jonathan Taylor coming back, I don't think it's going to help that much. I think the Colts are probably going to be drafting in the top 7 next year. I think the Falcons probably will too. I don't think anybody in the NFC South is worth a shit. Um, there's honestly a lot of teams right now that are playing an awful lot better than they actually are. Like the Cardinals. The Cardinals are not a very good team, but they're certainly playing like one. Now, is that just because nobody has tape on Josh Dobbs? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I watched him play at Tennessee. He was good. He wasn't NFL good, but they've kicked a couple teams in the ass. They played everyone tough. Uh, are they going to finish with more than 6 wins? Probably not. But they're one of those teams that you can never look at the spread with the game that they're in and be like, oh yeah, the Cardinals aren't going to cover this.
Well,
You never know.
with the Cardinals, I think the biggest piece of that, and I don't want to get this incorrect, so I will. I need to Google it real quick. I think the biggest piece in Arizona is Drew Petzing. I think he's the offensive coordinator from Arizona. I watched him absolutely take apart the Dallas Cowboys defense, and you could see it from the first play of the game, the way that he schemed everything. It was an RPO. Josh Dobbs had it. It was planned right at Micah Parsons. Let's take advantage of the Cowboys' aggressiveness. And boom, he runs for 15, 16 yards, something like that. And I knew in that moment, first play of the game, okay, Dallas is in for a long day. And that's what they did. They just methodically took that defense apart. I think that guy is a lot better than people realize or people know, because he's not a big name in the NFL. Um, he was with Cleveland the last couple of years. He was just the quarterbacks coach, and I think he has a really good head for the offensive game of football, and he's going to do good things in Arizona once they get their quarterback situation figured out.
Yeah, there are an awful lot of teams that need to figure out their quarterback position. But this is what I'm talking about. That guys like Desmond Ritter and Bo Nix are starting quarterbacks in the NFL because there's 10 guys who are good, and everyone else is like okay at best. And when you're okay at best, like you can make the playoffs. Are you going to win the Super Bowl? Probably not, unless you have like a all-world defense like Trent Dilfer had. It's
Yeah.
very very rare.
So
But those guys still have jobs.
I wanted to bring up the idea of parity in the NFL when we were talking about quarterbacks before, and this was what I was going to try and point to, and what I wanted to talk about was Ritter, and ultimately what it comes down to with a team in the NFL is, what is your goal? Is your goal to have a quarterback who ranks in the top 5 every season, or is your goal to finish the season with a positive record and making the playoffs and having a chance to compete for a Super Bowl? And if you have a guy like Ritter, he's not a great quarterback, but he's capable of going out there, handing off the ball to Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson 25, 30 times a game, and also throwing 350 yards and a couple of touchdowns. What more do you really need than that? Especially if you're paying a guy mid draft value contract for mid draft value, and not the huge contracts that top 5 first rounders are getting. What
Well, historically,
for the call to get him out of there when the Falcons are 3-3? They're poised just like everybody else to actually compete if he cleans some things up, just take care of the ball better. And he may not be great, but is he that bad?
I think he is. I think they're winning in spite of him and losing because of him. And when that's the case, you have to make a change. So, like, universally, that's a very bad sign, right? Like, you can't,
Mhm.
when you have a bad quarterback, you you can't, like, one thing you can't do is you can't lose because of your quarterback. Like, if they're not going to win you games, that's fine. You can Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo your way to Super Bowls. You really can. You can't have them lose you games, though. And Desmond Ritter is very good at losing you games and will never win you one. Maybe once he'll win you a game.
Yeah, I completely agree, Steve, and I think the answer to the question that Brendan was asking, what does it take, is a top 5 defense, so that it doesn't matter if the scrub you have starting a quarterback is going to try to lose you the game, the defense won't let him because he'll try.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, right? You can't have you're seeing Zach Wilson, I think, right now developing into a game manager, and that's so important because it's allowing the team to win. And he's not losing them games anymore. He's not making these. And all of a sudden, though, they're also letting him do things that are unusual for quarterbacks, and they're letting him get that a little bit. I like the tiniest bit of that Mahomes treatment because
Right.
Zach Wilson's also good at the things that Mahomes is good at, like throwing on the run,
Mm-hmm.
like those goofy sidearm throws. Like that's stuff he likes to do. And
And he's doing that more
Yeah.
than he was, and he's
right,
also
and you're seeing
they
it work.
adjusted the game plan, and he's throwing on first down instead of running the ball. It's like taking predictability out of the defensive scheming that the other team is having, and he's
And
starting
that was
to
the
put it
problem.
together.
That was the problem. And that's why I say I wouldn't hire defensive coordinators because they're so often such conservative play callers that it never lets the quarterback, the young quarterback, develop in a way that plays to his strength. Zach Wilson was almost doomed the second he went to New York because
Yeah.
of the coaching staff.
I
So
agree completely.
it's so when you have like a Desmond Ritter or a Baker Mayfield or guys like that, they will lose you games. Baker Mayfield lost the Buccaneers the game. Desmond Ritter lost the Falcons the game. Jimmy Garoppolo rarely will lose you a game. He's starting to do that a little bit as he's starting to age a bit. It looks like something's off and he's not getting the same zip on his fastball or whatever. But like he will when he was a 49er, he never lost them games. They didn't win because of him, but they didn't lose because of him either. He was able to execute the game plan. And as long as you can do that, you should be a starting quarterback. Then you have a guy like Jameis Winston, who will win you games. 100% win you games. He will also lose you games. Can you stomach that as a head coach? For Bruce Arians, apparently not. For Dennis Allen, I don't know why he won't turn to Jameis, but it's because he also has a very low threshold for will you lose me a game.
Right.
Derek Carr will not lose you a game.
Right.
He will rarely win you one at this point, but he won't lose you one. We are starting to see more quarterbacks, though, that were considered elite or are considered elite lose their team games. And is like, I'm wondering how high the tolerance is getting for that. Because Josh Allen can lose you a game. Jalen Hurts lost the Eagles that game. I don't want to hear XYZ happened. Jalen Hurts threw 3 picks.
Right.
They
But
lost.
those are anomalous things, though.
They are.
Those are things that don't often happen.
Yeah,
They
that's
are,
not
but-
within the career trajectory of Jalen Hurts as far as
Not within
what he
Jalen Hurts,
normally
but
does.
this year he's looking a little funky. Josh Allen, though, is very much, and Dak Prescott's like this too. They will lose you games, or you will win in spite of how they played. Josh Allen was that this past week. Like last night, they won in spite of how bad he played. Dak Prescott will throw the game away, but he'll also win you games. There's a tolerance for it some places, but if like you're not going to get a lot of Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady's or guys like that that will only win you games and at the very worst do what they need to do.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
like it's just this kind of crazy idea and notion that it really is situation. Like I think the reason we see so many bad starting quarterbacks in the NFL is because coaches have this aversion, and GMs especially have this aversion to quarterbacks who will lose you a game. And we're seeing guys like Jameis not getting playing time. Put Jameis Winston on that Pittsburgh offense, and I think they're a top 10 offense in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like that.
There
Or Las Vegas, same thing. Top 10 offense.
Get somebody
like that.
besides Matt Canada calling those plays, and that'll help too.
Yeah. I mean,
I did want to say
crazy.
something, Steve. You mentioned Zach Wilson being doomed when he got to the Jets. 100% agree because BYU is not in the conference, and they weren't on TV very much. So a lot of people didn't get to see Zach Wilson play in college. I got to see several games that he played. Zach Wilson plays like Patrick Mahomes. He goes out with does crazy shit with his arm, runs all over the place like his ass is on fire, and won BYU every game that I watched him play. Because he just went out and did crazy stuff and was
Right.
incredibly accurate with the football and had a massive arm. And
And
then he
threw
goes to
4
the
interceptions against Coastal Carolina when I was
yeah,
trying to
and he does
evaluate him, and I
he
went,
does
I don't
that
want any part
too.
of him.
He does that too, but you take the good with the bad when the guy can throw for 400 yards and make the opposing defense not only look bad but look stupid. There's a
Yeah.
difference between making a team look bad and making a team look stupid. And you want a quarterback ideally like Mahomes who makes the other defensive coordinator look like a complete idiot.
There's also
And
a,
Zach Wilson went to the Jets and they've got him throwing like 4 yard screens and not being able to run. And it's like, dude, he's a deer. Let him out of his cage. You let him do stuff. And the Jets just, with Robert Saleh as the head coach, a defensive guy, as you pointed out, defensive head coach there, just weren't going to let him do that. So why would the Jets have drafted him in the first place? It just boggles the mind.
It blew my mind when they drafted him because, or at least how they used him. I was like, all right, maybe, because I don't know how Salah was going to call plays with him. But like when it just like, you can't come out that conservative. It instantly puts the wrong message out there. And then you just, yeah, you got to play to your quarterback strength, man. Like, and it's just, that's the issue with, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you'll see me on my Twitter. Like, I always call Zach Wilson like my husband because he's so good looking. And I'm like, I just think he's like the hottest dude in the world. But like, I also think he's a good quarterback. Desmond Ritter, it doesn't matter the system he's in, the coach he has, the talent around him, he sucks and will suck and will always suck as an NFL quarterback.
I think Zach Wilson was also a victim of the system. If I recall correctly, he wasn't supposed to start right away. He was supposed to be the bridge. They were supposed to build the team with Flacco there. Flacco got hurt, and Wilson got pushed into service. I will say that last season, as far as DVOA metrics, Justin Fields was way worse than Zach Wilson, which kind of shows you how fantasy performance can adjust the narrative. What happens in the NFL? Justin Fields was markedly worse than Zach Wilson as a pass thrower last year, but was the quarterback of the future because of the fact that he put up so many fantasy points, even though the team was god awful,
Justin
and they
Fields
still are.
is also, though, a victim of his situation where a defensive coordinator is his head coach. And it look
Right.
at for
And
the
he's
first
not being
3 weeks
coached
of the year.
correctly.
For the first 3 weeks of the year, they ran two combined design quarterback runs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Steve,
What?
I grew up watching Wade Phillips try to be a head coach, so I'm right here with you. I don't think it works. I think you have your Bill Walshes of the world, and then you have your Wade Phillipses of the world, and then you have your outliers like Bill Belichick. But that only works if you have like god tier quarterback.
Who ran the offense himself?
Yeah,
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I think a lot of it has to do with if you don't let Justin Fields run, which is the one good thing that he is good at at football, it's kind of in the interest of bubble wrapping him, because we know that quarterbacks decline very, very fast when they are running quarterbacks, and pocket guys are going to last much longer. So if you have the long-term investment of a top 5 quarterback that you draft, you need the talent that somebody's going to bring that has the complete game, that can use their legs, but you also need the longevity of somebody who's going to be a pocket passer. That's one of the things that has been different with Derek Carr, is that he's not a runner. He never was
he never
running,
would. Yeah, that was never his thing.
and he's had a couple of injuries. One was a freak, like the only sack that Donald Penn allowed the entire season, that broke his leg. With the best offensive line that Derek Carr had, he had a fantastic offensive line, and he was in the MVP conversation, and they were on their way to beating the Patriots that year and making it as the AFC Super Bowl representative.
that happened on Christmas Eve 2016, and it ruined Christmas for me.
And I was there, and I had my Niners fan friend with me, and I turned to him right as Derek Carr is on the cart right underneath us, going off into the bleakness, and I turned to Sean and I said, "This is your fault. It happened because I brought you." And so then
It's harsh.
so,
It's harsh.
so then when Garoppolo got hurt a couple years ago, when we were at a game, he looked at me and he goes, "God damn it." So that was fun. But
I love that.
you have to have somebody who's going to be around. And I think that they knew, if we have Justin run the ball as much as he's running the ball, let's teach him how to be a good passer. They're just not doing it. He doesn't have the footwork. He doesn't have the fundamentals. He's not,
Well, because he can't, because
he
the
doesn't
the
process
pocket folds.
quickly.
Like he has the worst offensive line I've maybe ever seen. He's
There's a bunch out there, though. I mean, Washington is terrible, and New Orleans is terrible, and the
I
Raiders are
watched
bad.
Justin Fields take that snap. He steps back, and the pocket literally just collapses around him. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, what are you supposed to do? And then you look at the concepts that are drawn up, and like 3 guys will end up in the exact same spot. And I'm like, what do you want him to do
Yeah.
when you're running everybody into the same spot? Like, it just doesn't work like that. That's not how play calling works.
Right.
Matt Eberflus should be fired right off the bat.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing that needs to happen.
And continue the Chicago coaching carousel.
And you got it wrong. And you got it wrong a couple times. And you know what, though? Keep trying until you get it right. Don't just sit back and be like, well, we fucked it up with Matt Nagy, and we kind of fucked it up this time. But, like, what are you going to do? You can't fire another one. Like, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. There's plenty of guys out there that could be head coaches. So, like, or at least try to be. I mean, go pick someone out of the stands, and it'll be the same thing. You can't get worse. You have the number 1 pick. Like, I mean, you're not going to get any worse. So, like, what's the problem here that I'm seeing? Like, and again, it's like this bizarre thing where there's, like, not only is there a bad quarterback issue in the league, there's bad coaching in the league right now too. You're looking at Brandon Staley, he sucks. Matt Eberflus sucks. Friggin' Bill Belichick sucks now. Like, I mean, what is happening? Like, Arthur Smith, I'd fight him if I saw him today, like on site. Like, we're fighting, like square up, and he knows exactly what that ass whooping's for. Like, he knows exactly why it's coming.
He knows what he did.
If I was the owner of the Falcons, I would fire him so fast. I'd be like, the second I got the report and it said Bijan Robinson is in a 60-40 split or a 55-45 split, I'd be like, bruh.
That's malpractice. That's malpractice.
We drafted Kyle Pitts super early. Then you didn't use him. Then we drafted Bijan Robinson super early, and you're not using him. So I'm starting to ask Arthur Smith, what the fuck are you doing?
Give those 2 guys to Kyle Shanahan and see what happens. See what fucking happens to the rest of the league.
They're setting records. That offense is setting records.
I'm of the mind, Steve, that there are 17 head coaches in the league right now who should be fired immediately.
And replaced by whom?
That's the problem. You can't fire them because
I'll do it for free.
No, I
pull someone out of the stands. You got to hire Steve here to do it for you.
I get that, because I think I can do a better job too.
I don't know,
but if you okay, so let's talk about Arthur Smith for a second. He has 1,000-yard rusher in Tyler Algier, and goes out and they draft Bijan Robinson. Yes, Bijan is a mercurial talent. He's one of the greatest RB prospects that we've ever seen. You had a guy. Now you have 2 guys. Well, what's the state of running back in the NFL?
Right,
everything is committee now.
Position in football.
So 60-40 is par for the course. If you're not going to hand the ball off to Bijan more than 60% of the time, then get him out on pass plays.
I can't deal with this argument, because football fans on Twitter and on the internet constantly are like, draft the best player available, draft the best player available, and then the Falcons fucking do it. And this is the argument. Oh, they already had a running back. Why they draft another one? The Falcons are fucking stupid. You know what? No, you either do or you don't. You either draft the best player available, or you draft for scheme fit, and you go 4-11. Fuck you.
Yeah, that's what I'm arguing, is that's what they're doing, and I can see it. It pissed me off because I had Algier, my home league dynasty, and as soon as they took Bijan, like, my head hit the table, and I was like, no, this is the worst thing that could happen.
I don't even think that they're doing best player available, because Bijan's great, but you can't. He's a running back. Like, I hate to say it, but like, they're kind of a dime a dozen, and we saw it. Like, the Colts, Zach Moss was crushing it. Like, I don't know how the Colts saw Zach Moss doing what he was doing and decided to extend Jonathan Taylor. I would have traded him.
And he had a huge game yesterday too.
Yeah, these second a player says, I want out, I'd be like, okay.
But
fine.
The thing that the Falcons have done is they've drafted 3 guys, one at wide receiver, one at tight end, and one at running back, who are all generational talents. Now you need to be able to utilize all those talents, but you don't want them to be hurt. Now, Kyle Pitts, and I have him scheduled to talk about later. He has been hurt. It's an unreported injury, not one that he can't play through, but it has limited him. And he has started to come out of that, and we'll get to that later. Bijan Robinson is a running back. Running backs get contact. They get lower leg injuries, and we see it happening all over the place. So same thing with Fields. If you want to increase their longevity, you have to put bubble wrap on them and spread everything around. Because if you have a talent like that with the investment that you have, you can't.
That's not how you win, though. That's not how you win. You can't win that way. You can't bubble wrap guys in a violent game. You just can't. Use them, abuse them, and move on, because that's how you win. I hate to say it. It sounds cold and cruel, but it's the truth, because that's how every great team has great players that touch the ball a lot. Like Cooper Kupp, the Rams are literally like, you will never see him get less than 10 targets. Like, we will make sure he touches the ball. Todd Gurley was literally schemed constantly to touch the ball. Yep. And then he got hurt and his knees wore out. And you know what? Like, that just happens. And it's sad. And I'm sorry for him, but he made a boatload of money, so I can't feel too bad.
Right.
Like, the Steelers, they signed Antonio Brown to a massive deal and then fed him 180 targets a year. Because that's what you're supposed to do with your best players, because that's why the Steelers were good. Arthur Smith has these guys, and he's like, I don't think Drake London is anywhere near a generational talent, but like, he has these guys that I'm like, Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson should be touching the ball. One of them should touch the ball every play. Like, legitimately. Like, almost every play, one of them should be touching the ball.
Yeah,
or be the design guy to touch the ball.
Bijan Robinson touches the ball a lot, and he's still woefully and almost criminally underused, as far as I'm concerned.
That's the other thing, is that he does get a ton of touches every week.
I thought about this a lot. I mean, I'm pretty old. I've seen a lot of football in my day, and there's really, really, really bad offensive lines in the NFL.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really bad offensive lines in college, but the problem starts long before that. The problem starts when these kids are 12 and 13 years old and they start playing 7-on-7 football because their parents don't want them getting concussions, which is completely understandable. But when you play that style of football, what you don't develop is offensive line talent. And when coaches are trying to recruit offensive linemen, they just don't have very many options, and they have to play what they have. And when you have college linemen who aren't very good going up against players who are very good and are getting better every year, which is defensive linemen, you're going to get mismatch after mismatch after mismatch. And we've seen this year red zone scoring go down considerably across the board. It's not just the Raiders. I thought it was just the Raiders. No, it's fucking everybody.
No, it's everybody.
And why is it everybody? Because nobody has any time to throw. Nobody has any rushing lanes. Why? Because offensive lines suck and defensive lines are god tier. And why is that? Because 14-year-olds don't play offensive guard anymore.
Well, in college, you don't need to have stout offensive lines anymore because everybody is playing air raid. They have mobile quarterbacks. It's not as important as it used to be. Yeah, because they're recruiting
from spread offenses at the high school level.
Right.
They don't have offensive lines, so they can't scheme for that.
Right. Okay, speaking of offensive lines, the next, what the fuck, the Viking, it's actually not even offensive line. The Vikings defense, they really went out yesterday and we're just like, you know what? We're not taking it anymore. Let's give Kirk Cousins a game. What happened? Where did the Vikings defense come from?
Justin Fields broke his thumb.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fair.
They played the Bears.
Like,
the Vikings
Matt Eberfluss exists. Like,
yeah.
I like that. Matt Eberfluss's mother ruined my life, basically. Like, is what happened.
Are you
the
a Bears
Vikings
fan?
have been above average
No,
for their entire history.
I enjoy watching good football, and I like Justin Fields and all. Like, just the fact that the ineptitude in Chicago is so amazing to me that, like, it honestly should be inspiring to a whole bunch of fuck ups in life, because it shows that someone with absolutely no talent whatsoever can ascend to the highest levels of their industry. So it should inspire everybody who is beyond mediocre or below average or absolutely unqualified to do anything to try, because who knows what'll happen. It doesn't matter if you're 3 feet tall and 600 pounds. You should go try out for point guard in the NBA or a model for Calvin Klein, because it doesn't matter, because Matt Eberflus has made it as an NFL head coach, where he has the IQ of a broomstick and the play calling ability of my grandmother who's been dead for 25 years. He's not good.
If Matt Eberflus and Josh McDaniels can become head coaches in the NFL, you can ask that girl out. You can ask that guy out. Don't let your dreams be dreams, people. Go for it.
Go for it.
We've seen what lack of any redeeming qualities and ineptitude they can lead to being a president. So it's
as far as the Vikings are concerned, they have been above average to good for their entire history, like literally since the 60s.
Yeah, they've never been bad.
They've never been bad. However, the Vikings are the unluckiest team I've ever seen in my entire life. They're almost they're right, just neck and neck with the Falcons, maybe a little bit unluckier than that. But the Vikings are fucking cursed, and they'll never win anything ever that's important, but they will beat the Bears.
Well, shout out to John Boyce and his last two documentaries being the Vikings and the Falcons.
All right, they're so good.
What the fuck? Sam Howell finishing as quarterback 4. I'm the one person that called Sam Howell that's not a Commanders fan. I saw it coming. I called for it last year. Get Wentz out of there. Put Howell in. I love the guy and invested in him heavily this year in fantasy, home league, fishbowl, and if it wasn't for his offensive line, he'd be doing even better.
Yeah, Sam Howell's a baller. I like that kid. I liked him in North Carolina, and I sure like him now. He's got some really good, talented wide receiver, and he's making use of it.
All right, another what the fuck?
Oh, Ron Rivera is also one of the worst coaches on the fucking planet. Hate him too.
He's a Cal legacy, which he will always be in my heart, but I cannot stand watching him coach a football game.
No one has ever ridden a play. You know who Ron Rivera is, and he's just Jeff Fisher. Like, he's Jeff Fisher 2.0. He had one good season, has literally made a career off of it. And I said that on Twitter, and everyone came for me. And then I was like, I have the numbers to back it up, and their career statistics are exactly the same.
This is
he'll do his 7-10 bullshit for 5 more years, and then he'll retire. We'll have to see him again.
He'll retire, and everyone will pretend like he was a good coach. He's not a good coach. I would tell him to his face that he's fucking up that entire team by not using Antonio Gibson enough. He came out and actively said, he's like, man, I wish I had known Sam Howell was as good as he was. I would have played him last year.
What? You see him every day in practice. What is wrong with you?
Right. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Are you not the head coach of the Washington?
What are you doing in practice every day? I wonder. Why is Terry McLaurin not touching the ball 15 times a game?
This is a Frank Reich and Mike McCarthy tweet.
My fantasy team would like to know that as well.
What happened to Jahan Dotson? How come Antonio Gibson, the former wide receiver, doesn't catch passes out of the backfield or play in the slot ever?
I will say
he was a 1,000-yard rusher twice in a row and didn't get a lot of targets in the passing game, so he can run the ball.
Isn't Ron Rivera a defensive coach?
Yes.
Yeah, he is. That's my point. It just proves my point more. That defensive coaches suck. God, they are terrible. They're just the worst kind of don't do that.
Things are changing.
It's not only bad. It's worse than bad for the NFL. It's boring.
Right. That's the worst part of it. But things are changing in Washington to the benefit of Sam Howell, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and that's Eric Bieniemy. Unfortunately, Jahan Dotson is nowhere to be found.
Eric's sleeping with Bieniemy, as Chris Berman used to call him.
Yeah. All right. Another what the fuck. Yesterday in fantasy, this week, we've had no quarterbacks score more than 22.5 points in standard PPR leagues. In the last 4 weeks, we've had 8, 7, 7, and 7 quarterbacks score over 22.5 points into the 30s. This week, we had 0. That's pretty alarming, which is also why Howell finished as quarterback 4.
Yeah. I think, honestly, if you put Jimmy Garoppolo and Brian Hoyer's numbers together, you might have a top 10 guy. I just think that the rules have gone toward the benefit of the offense while the talent has gone toward the benefit of the defense. I think defenses are so much more talented than they were when I was growing up, or even when I was a young adult. The defensive lines are so much bigger, so much stronger. The edge rushers are so much more fierce than they were. I mean, when I was a kid, there was Bruce Smith, there was Charles Haley, Reggie White, and then who. But there's like 20 edge rushers I can name right now that are amazing, amazing talents that you never want to not stay up at night trying to figure out how you're going to block as a defensive coordinator. You have to game plan for these people. And if you don't have the horses, you just can't. And your quarterback's going to be running for his life. He's not going to be able to complete anything in the red zone. And you're just not going to score very many fantasy points if that happens. And you're not going to win a lot of games either.
We are seeing a revolution, though, at wide receiver because kids are coming out. They're playing 7-on-7 football. They're doing route running like we've never seen before. And they're putting it all on TikTok, and they're going to these like route running showcases and stuff like that. The amount of wide receiver talent that's going to be coming out from 2 years ago over the next 10, 15 years is going to be absolutely insane. These kids are
and that's all good. That's all brought to you by NFL's concussion policy too. The talent is going from the lines to receivers. These kids are bigger, stronger, faster than ever, and they are better than ever across the board.
Yeah.
And, when I was a kid, a guy like Carl Pickens could be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And Carl Pickens was really good, but he wouldn't start today, I don't think. Not on a lot of teams. He wouldn't start today.
No. And I mean, look at Jared Goff. Hashtag Nevada boys. All right.
Yeah.
The 0 RB draft strategy showed its face in a huge way yesterday, and a lot of that has to do with injuries. But Kyron Williams, Zach Moss, Kareem Hunt, and Chuba Hubbard, none of whom were drafted in the top 24, or some of them not even in the top 36 of running backs in your fantasy drafts, all finished as top 12 running backs yesterday. And the Kyron Williams thing leads me to my next what the fuck. How are the injuries still going on? Yesterday, we potentially lost Kyron Williams and Ronnie Rivers. We lost McCaffrey and Debo. We lost Ryan Tannehill, Justin Fields, Jimmy G, Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, David Montgomery, Damian Harris. Like, these are guys that are rostered in fantasy football. They're counted on by their owners to produce and get points on the board to win championships, which is what we're doing here. And they're all going down. That's on top of Cooper Kupp being out, Jahmyr Gibbs being out, all of these guys. It's been an absolute wasteland this year. I think that you and I talked about this before, Tyler, and it's just not stopping.
Yeah, it's not. I talked about last time I was on your show. It reminds me there was a year I watched. I was like maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and it seemed like in the first 3 weeks, like 20 guys tore their ACLs. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Just knee after knee after knee after knee, blown out, blown out, blown out. It was gone. But I honestly think this is the same problem as what I was discussing before. It's not necessarily a problem. It's just the evolution of the sport. The defensive players are getting bigger and stronger and faster, hitting harder. And when you do that, when you grow kids like this, when you put them in positions as edge rusher, defensive tackle, linebackers, even safety, and you have them run full blast at an offensive player and hit him as hard as they possibly can, which is how football works. If the defensive player is bigger, the offensive player will often get hurt. That's just how football goes. It's the basic principle of the sport. But we're seeing such an extreme now where the defensive players are so big, so strong, so fast, and so good that offensive players, they just don't have a chance. And they have to just pull ridiculous acrobatics out of their ass just to get a few yards. And if they don't, they're going to get absolutely smacked. And if you get smacked enough times, something is going to break. And that's what we're seeing.
But we're also seeing the soft tissue injuries. We're seeing the non-contact injuries, the knee twists, the ligament sprains, things like that.
Yeah, because you have to contort yourself in such a ridiculous manner to get past these monsters on the defense. And you have to do such, I don't want to use the word acrobatics again, but basically that's what it is. You have to do stuff that normal people can't do. And if you can't do that, then you can't be an offensive player in the league. But when you do stuff like that, you tear your knees.
So speaking of injuries and your husband, Steve, did you see Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball yesterday, a few weeks after Achilles tendon surgery. Oh, nice eye roll.
Aaron Rodgers is such a goon. I really, honest to God, I can't with him. Like, oh God, does he drive me freaking crazy? Um, he's just, oh God, he's so annoying. Aaron Rodgers is going to come back this year. Aaron Rodgers is going to come back this year and he's going to play. And that's so stupid. That's so
I would argue that
unbelievable.
trading for him at his age was stupid, especially with the
I
contract that he had.
It could have been, it might have been, um, and like that's fine, but uh, it just there was no reason for him to play. There's no reason for him to play this year because he's not going to give you the best chance on one foot. He's just not. And you can lie to yourself if you want and say, but he's Aaron Rodgers. Great. He's Aaron Rodgers with a torn Achilles. There's no medical evidence or surgery right now that is going to heal that in this short amount of time and make you effective. Now, Aaron Rodgers is not a runner. So he doesn't rely on his mobility that much anymore. He relies on it a little bit. So are you telling me you feel good going into the playoffs against some of these teams with these pass rushers and have a guy who's a statue, a true statue?
Well,
I would, yes.
I wouldn't feel great about it, but I did see Byron Leftwich win a game once for Marshall with
With a
his offensive
broken
line
leg.
literally had to carry him from play to huddle to play because
Yeah.
his knee was gone. And he won that game anyway just by standing in the pocket and throwing. It can be done, but in the NFL, it's unlikely.
He was
However,
running on a broken leg.
the Jets still have to sell tickets. They still have to have people watch their TV show, which is the games that they're in. So they want to
They're
make the
winning
best
right
product
now.
possible. They're winning
Yeah.
for now, but it's still Zach Wilson. How long is this going to last?
They're definitely defense driven too. And I will defend Aaron Rodgers. I'm a Cal fan. He's from my area here in Northern California. I don't necessarily agree with him on all of the ridiculous things that come out of his mouth, but as a player, I will defend him. I just want to point out that the major difference in Zach Wilson's play from this year to last year is the presence of Aaron Rodgers as a mentor and possibly somebody who has a good relationship with Robert Saleh and has gotten him to move a little bit to the benefit of Zach Wilson. So, all right. And then finally, the last what the fuck. James Cook yesterday had 0 targets. Now, this guy was absolutely the receiving option out of the backfield at Georgia. And when he came into the NFL, the one thing that made him special was the fact that he was the receiving option with Zamir White in that Georgia backfield. And all of the hype surrounding James Cook and his draft capital this year, the things that made him good last year in fantasy while not being a top 24 guy, gave him some steam this offseason. And he goes out into a game and gets 0 targets. What are the Bills even doing?
Well, targets for running backs is such a nebulous and high variance statistic. I don't put a whole lot of stock in it unless I don't care about targets unless you're a top 20 wide receiver, and even then, I mean Devontae Adams is getting 4 or 5 targets a game these days because he's hurt. When we expected 15 to 20 targets per game, which he should be getting if healthy. But for running backs, it's just it depends on the defense you're playing and it depends on your offensive game plan. I do think obviously James Cook should be used more, and obviously the score of that game would dictate that probably James Cook should have been used more. It might not have been as close as it was, but it's so random. I can't get mad at it.
Oh, yeah.
I get mad at a lot.
All right. Okay, now
James Cook.
moving on, and I'm going to run through this one really quickly. It's time for Don't Give Up. All right. everybody who was ready to give up on Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer had his highest number of targets yesterday. He's doubled his targets over the last week, which was more than he had in the first 4 games of the season. He finished high in the top I think he was tight end 12. He's starting to get a feel for the NFL game, and the Raiders are starting to follow suit and give him some time. So don't give up if you're a Michael Mayer owner, because you probably already did. And big waiver wire pickup this week is going to be Michael Mayer. Don't give up on Chris Olave. Chris Olave hasn't been living up to his ADP. However, he is still in the wide receiver 2 as wide receiver 20 in PPR. And things are going to get better in New Orleans. Same with Devontae Smith. Don't give up on him. And Marquise Brown. All of whom had, so Marquise Brown, Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, Marquise Brown, Mike Evans, Jamar Chase, Calvin Ridley, and Puka Nacua all had fewer points than targets yesterday. But don't give up on them.
Devontae Smith, I think, is a victim of A.J. Brown being so good. Jalen Hurts kind of took the A.J. Brown's down there somewhere, might as well chuck it up. He took that approach several times yesterday against the Jets. And he had some success, not enough to where that should be his philosophy.
I think it's kind of funny that the offense for the Eagles has not looked as good since A.J. Brown's little bitch fit that has resulted in this ridiculous little run that he's been on. It's looked awfully forced because it's almost like Jalen Hurts doesn't want to piss off A.J. Brown, so he's force-feeding him the ball and throwing interceptions because of it.
I can't disagree with that. One of the things the Eagles did really, really well last year when they went to the Super Bowl was spreading the ball around to a lot of different receivers and getting Devontae Smith and all of their running backs involved in the offense. Unfortunately, a lot of the running backs have been hurt this year, and DeAndre Swift has he's taken the ball and run with it, to use a pun there. But that has made the offense as a whole an awful lot worse overall. Now, they've still been winning up until yesterday in spite of that because their defense has been really good. And a crappy Eagles offense this year is still a really good NFL offense, despite what they've done to it.
Stout too.
Yesterday, it just didn't work. The Jets took advantage of all the opportunities that they could and all the mistakes Jalen Hurts made, and they won the game. And good on them for doing so. There's an awful lot in Philly that can be fixed. I don't know if they will, because you can scheme things, but if you have personality issues and conflicts between players, you can't scheme that. You have to deal with that as a coach. And can they? I don't know. Maybe. We'll see.
You can trade A.J. Brown out of town.
Yeah. Trade him to Tennessee. They need a wide receiver, don't they?
Oh, God. No, they don't. They need a quarterback. That's what Tennessee needs. Yes. Tennessee needs a quarterback. It's not.
Doesn't
it's
everybody?
It's not a DeAndre Hopkins problem.
Tannehill is like one of those quarterbacks who probably shouldn't be one anymore. Like he's okay.
Not for me.
He's not even okay anymore. He's terrible. He's shit.
Well, I mean, historically, not now. Now he's god awful, but historically he's been like fine.
He was fine for a couple of years.
Ryan Tannehill's quarterback, whatever, fine. He's not going to win anything.
I just need somebody to get Treylon Burks the ball. God damn it! All right, don't give up on Josh Jacobs. Yesterday he finished as RB21, but the Patriots haven't been that bad against the run, and Jacobs is still sitting at the RB10 for the season after having a really slow start the first couple weeks. Don't give up on him. And then finally, don't give up Mr. Atlanta Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts. Tight end 2 in Atlanta behind Jonnu Smith. That's a joke. He finished his tight end 3 yesterday.
Is it? Seems like it's not.
He has had 2 straight 15-point finishes and 2 straight top 10 finishes as a tight end. It looks like they're making a concerted effort to not force the ball to him, but get him more involved. That a lot of that could have to do with him recovering from whatever malady was holding him back. And if you have not given up on Kyle Pitts at this point, it looks like he's going to be startable finally for the first time in a couple years. So don't give up.
I won't give up.
All right. Now it's time for Nobody's Home, asshole. It's time for you, asshole. This is a segment in which we discuss performance vampires and touchdown vultures. This one's short today. There wasn't a whole lot of it yesterday. But Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver Andre Yosevich, you're an asshole. You're owned and you were started in 1% of sleeper leagues. I'm sure Jamar Chase owners wanted a touchdown from him. I'm sure T. Higgins owners wanted a touchdown from him. I'm sure Joe Mixon owners wanted a receiving touchdown from him. Instead, it went to Andre Yosevich. You asshole. All right, next up. Buffalo Bills, Deontay Hardy. Started in 3% of leagues. Yeah, nobody wanted a Diggs touchdown. Nobody wanted a Abe Davis touchdown. Nobody wanted a James Cook reception for a touchdown. Deontay Hardy got it. You're an asshole.
This segment
Fun
is
fact.
hilarious to me because these poor kids are going to get like 5 touches in their entire fucking career, and we're getting mad at them. We're yelling at them for
Yeah, fun
scoring a
fact.
touchdown.
My little brother played
We need
college
to give
football
orange
against Deontay
slices to
Hardy.
Capri Suns.
Where did Deontay play?
Played at some tiny little D2 school.
Nothing wrong with D2.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was, hey, you know what? My brother played against some good people, but he played against Deontay Hardy. So
I graduated from a D2. So go Wonder Boys. All right. Isn't that the greatest
that can't
nickname?
possibly be your team's name.
The Arkansas Tech Wonder Boys.
That's horrifying.
And
Did the Catholic Church make that one up?
No, it's a poly school, like Texas Tech or Caltech. It's a pretty good university.
Do they have science in Arkansas?
Yes, yeah. It's actual science too.
Yeah, it's how they make Mountain Dew. It's strictly used to make in the production of Mountain Dew.
Okay.
Yes, and the women's teams, they were all called the Golden Suns. So the Wonder Boys and the Golden Suns. The genesis of the nickname, I think they were supposed to be Mustangs or something like that. But in the 30s, they played against Alabama, and they had this kid at quarterback that went out. Alabama was ranked number 1, and Arkansas Tech beat them. And so the next day, the newspaper headline was "Wonder Boys of Arkansas Tech defeat Alabama" or something like that. And so that name stuck, and they've been the Wonder Boys ever since. All right, and also, going back to the Buffalo Bills, Quentin Morris. Nobody wanted a Dalton Kincaid touchdown. None of his owners. They wanted a Quentin Morris touchdown. Quentin Morris, you're an asshole. And finally, the asshole of the week. National Football League referees. You are all assholes. Number 1. And this hurts me too. Not because I'm a Zeke Elliott owner, and not because I wanted anything good, wanted the Patriots to do anything good against my Raiders yesterday, but to see Zeke have what could be his final moment of glory in the NFL and take a little swing pass 80 yards to the house, get called back for a stupid penalty. NFL referees, you're all assholes.
Hey, the Patriots were trying to cheat, and those good, upstanding referees were not about to stand for that kind of nonsense.
Zeke should also be starting for the Patriots right now.
You know, there's some argument there. But more importantly,
Stevenson's not taking that 80 yards to the house.
No.
Well, with his concrete sandals, I mean, what the hell is he doing out there?
But I don't think Zeke, if there hadn't been a flag, you could see the Raiders' second level kind of pull up when they saw the flag come, and they didn't really go hard after Zeke. I don't think that would have happened if it was a real play. But the main reason that the NFL refs are the asshole of the day is the calls in the 49ers game, and I hate the 49ers, and I never root for the 49ers to win, but that targeting penalty or whatever they called it, hit on a defenseless receiver was horseshit. And then there was another play that they got flagged for they created the drive that caused Cleveland to go down and take the lead, which caused Jake Moody to hit a field goal try. They got pushed to the right by the wind, and he missed, and he's sad. poor rookie, and that's why NFL referees, you are the assholes of the week.
It should be every week. They're assholes every week.
I can make that case, but I felt like I didn't want to make Quentin Morris the asshole of the week.
I think Jameson Williams is my asshole of the week. There was no reason for him to catch that one long touchdown. Like my fantasy season has been plagued by every team who goes up against me scores the most points of the week.
Mhm.
So I'll be making a plea to my league to do the median scoring thing, so that I can actually not get screwed every week.
My dynasty home league, I've led the league in points against for 3 straight years, and I'm doing it again. And I've tried to get everybody to vote for median scoring, and nobody will go for it.
It just makes more sense, and it kind of increases the competitiveness of the league. So I don't understand why more people don't do it.
Yeah, and it makes you not feel bad.
That too. It's like if
And-
you're the second highest scorer and you lose to the high scorer, you're like, I still got to win. It's fine.
Yeah, and I don't feel like tanking in the leagues where
Right. It rewards you for putting together a good team.
yeah. All right, so getting ready to finish up. We'll get to watch the end of this
Second
barn
half.
burner in
This game
Inglewood.
sucks. What the fuck's up with all the goddamn like primetime games? Why do they suck so much?
Well,
This
see,
game
when you
should've been
have
great.
2 elite coaches like Mike McCarthy, and I already forgot his name. And anyway,
I see
it
all
was
the
Brandon Staley?
yeah, Brandon
Yeah.
Staley. When they're butting heads, it's going to be a defensive.
The cheap and easy answer to why these games suck is because the Cowboys are always in them.
That's true, and the Inglewood Chargers of San Diego of Los Angeles. All right, so let's draft something, you guys. We'll just
All
do
right,
2
I'm ready.
rounds because we only have about 15 minutes. But we could do cartoons, movies, actors, cocktails, fast food burgers, things to
Ooh.
smoke on the grill. What do you guys want to
I
do?
don't. I'm a movie buff, so that's usually my choice. But I'm down for whatever.
Do we have are we 6 deep in knowledge of film directors?
I might be like 3 deep in knowledge of that.
That's it? You don't know?
I know
that much?
some people, but I know movies themselves more than the directors.
Okay. Let's go. Can we go 6 deep on serial killer movies since it's Halloween time?
Do horror movies and make it more general, and then
Horror
we can
movie.
really go
Okay,
6
that's
deep.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Horror films. Let
I'm
me
here-
get this
Here to help.
random generator going. Random
Ooh, Keenan Allen
generator.
sighting.
The wheel of names. All right. Let's go, Steven.
Ooh, my official name.
And Tyler. Let me go back to screen share. So you guys can see this and I'm not. You can see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. All right, Steven, you get the 101.
Woo.
Up. All right, I will take the 2. Tyler, you get the 3 and 4. I'll
Okay.
take the 5, and Steven, you get the 6. Horror
Sweet.
films.
Let's do it.
All right.
With the 101, Steve.
For the 101 of horror films, listen. Anyone who's a horror fan is gonna kind of come at me for this because the classics seem to hold a special place in a lot of people's hearts. But for me, I'm gonna go with the scariest movie I've ever sat through in a theater, and I'm gonna go with The Conjuring. That would be my
Ooh.
101 of horror movies. That was the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life. I screamed, I swore, I nearly walked out of the theater. I was terrified. I will take The Conjuring 101.
Okay. It's I like that you called that a classic.
No, it's not one of the classics. That's
Oh,
why like people get mad. So like everyone wants like,
got it. Got it.
oh, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, or Night of the Living Dead, and they're not scary.
Well,
So
I'm going to hope that my number one falls, and I'm going to take my number two. And this was a film that is kind of close to me. A good friend of mine, his dad wrote it,
ooh.
and at the time, the entire family was living in New York. They were struggling to get by. He wrote the movie, sold the script, got an assistant producer credit on it. Um, It became a worldwide phenomenon, turned into a franchise with something of like 15 sequels. That
Oh,
movie is Friday the 13th.
mm.
And to this day, Victor Miller, if you try and talk to him about that movie, he will scream at you if you bring up Jason Voorhees, and he'll go, "It was always about the mother." The fact that they turned that into a Jason Voorhees franchise, Victor Miller is going to die hating that.
But doesn't he make
And
money every time they use it?
he does, and he's not upset about that. But his son, my friend Ian, is in a very incredible Oakland based black dirge metal band called Kowloon Walled City, named after the Kowloon Walled City. And if you want to listen to like really sludgy, just dark, slow metal,
Is he the
check out
bass
Kowloon Walled
player?
City. He's the bass player.
Oh, I know that guy. He was on the McCubby Chronicles comment section.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
talked to
yeah.
him quite a bit.
And his brother wrote for Baseball Prospectus for a long time. Yeah,
Right, that guy.
their dad wrote Friday the 13th.
Well, hot shit. That guy's a cool guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's kind of what got me into SB Nation and why I wound up on Silver and Black Pride too.
Yeah.
All right. So you got the
Right.
103.
Okay, so I get two in a row, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, 103 has to be. Uh, sometimes there are movies which are so transcendent and so they become like the genre themselves, and they transcend that and become something more. And I think this movie did that to a point. My 103 has to be The Exorcist.
Oh, that
Uh,
was what I was thinking too. We're on
yeah,
the same
the,
wavelength.
the book, of course, was amazing. The movie became just something that's so emblematic of horror in general, where there's this little girl and the devil is inside her. Like, can something be more scary than that? Probably
Yeah.
not.
And think of it at
Uh,
the time, how
oh man,
unique it was. It had never been
yeah.
seen.
And everything else is reminiscent of it and calls back to it and references it all the time. Like once when I was a teenager, I watched Basic Instinct, and I was like, this movie is just a ripoff of everything. And then I realized, no, Basic Instinct came out in the early '90s. Everything else ripped off that. And I think Exorcist is the same way. There are so many things in pop culture that reference The Exorcist,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's become absolutely timeless. I will move on to 104. Um, there are horror movies and movies in general where you don't see the bad guy until the very end, and the bad guy becomes, like the movie Alien, for instance. Alien is not my pick, but in the movie Alien, you don't see the alien aside from it being born until close to the end of the movie. It's just there as this looming fear for the rest of the characters. And the movie Jaws is my pick here. The movie Jaws is based on not having a shark; it's having music that's indicative of a shark being close. And the overall fear of having a shark in your vicinity is so scary to people because of a thing we call thalassophobia, which is the fear of really deep water. Because you can't see through really deep water and you don't know what's there. And the movie Jaws made everybody imagine that when you're in the ocean, you're about to be eaten by a very large shark. And that scared the shit out of so many people, which is what a horror movie should do. So that's definitely my pick at 104. It's Jaws.
Yeah.
And all of its sequels, which are not as good as Jaws, but they were there because Jaws was so popular.
Yeah.
That
Jaws
is such an amazing pick.
Jaws in 3D is great. Um, Okay. I like that our picks are genre defining. Friday the 13th kind of kicked off the slasher genre, and um, The Exorcist kicked off a whole bunch of like demonic genre, and The Conjuring like is derivative of
Of
that
The
kind of
Exorcist, and it kind of
The Exorcist.
revived, I think,
Right.
a lot of those kinds of movies, and the blockbuster horror
It
movie,
rewrote it,
actually.
and
Yeah.
Jaws helped create the blockbuster. So I'm glad this fell because this is my favorite movie. I watch it at least once a year. Not my favorite movie, my favorite horror movie of all time.
Mhm.
Um, my dad first showed this to me when I was about 9 or 10 years old. It had come out, and he and his friends went to the theater, and he said he couldn't sleep for a couple days. He was probably exaggerating, but this was unprecedented at the time, and it scared the ever loving shit out of people in 1963, 1964. And that movie is Night of the Living Dead. As an independent filmmaker myself, I love the story of George Romero going out with his friends and uh, shooting that film. I love that it's in black and white. I have "They're Coming to Get You, Barbara" in my head at all times. Um, it's like the fact that like the hero dies at the end. The black guy is not the first to die. It's just like that movie hits so checks off so many boxes for what good movie making is, and zombies are as scary as sharks, and it really created the zombie film genre, and I it was my 101, but I hoped it would fall, and it did. So I'm glad for
Well,
that.
after I accidentally badmouthed it, yeah. I mean, I kind of talked it into a second round pick. Um, whoops. Sorry.
There are so much zombie content in modern media and modern pop culture. Walking Dead. Everything of that nature. Uh, Resident Evil is a
28
good
days
example of
later.
the genre. Yeah, all that stuff. People forget how revolutionary Night of the Living Dead was in the early '60s. There was
Yes.
nothing like it prior to that. Nothing.
Yeah,
It
I will
changed
say,
everything.
yeah, when I was kind of like, no, I won't draft like one of the classics. It's not that they didn't change cinema forever. It was that if I was going to go with the 101, I needed something that was going to scare the shit out of me. You know what I mean? And truly scare the shit out of
Hmm.
me. And in today's world, Night of the Living Dead is no longer scary because we have more effects and we're used to different things. But as far as genre defining and proving that horror movies can actually have a place in real cinema, Night of the Living Dead is cinematic masterpiece. I mean, it's as important to cinema as any movie.
I love it.
Yep, I agree.
So, is it my turn? Do
Yeah.
I
It
am I
is.
bringing it on home? All right, so I'm going to give an honorable mention here, and it's not actually an honorable mention, but I want to show some love to the movie When a Stranger Calls, because that movie is almost directly responsible for my birth. Because my father took a girl to that movie and screamed so loud and like such a little bitch that she broke up with him after that date, and then he wound up meeting my mom, who then had me. So thank you very much to When a Stranger Calls for being so scary that my dad had to scream in a movie theater. But I'm going to go with an obscure movie that almost nobody has seen, but it is my favorite horror movie of all time. It is a werewolf movie. It is called Dog Soldiers. It is chaos from the word go. It's scary, it's action packed, the characters are well developed, the werewolves are actually imposing and terrifying, and all done with practical effects rather than special effects, which I really love. I watch that movie at least once a year. I'll stumble upon it, and especially when I was like before I had like streaming services, I was on cable a lot, and I would watch this movie. It would come on around Halloween time, and I love it. It's called Dog Soldiers. I just will absolutely go to bat for that movie all the time. The Exorcist was actually going to be probably my second pick. And then if I'm giving a true honorable mention to the second pick, it would be Saw for revolutionizing the body horror franchise, and
Yeah.
having one of the best horror soundtracks of all time, along with The Exorcist. I think both of those have just absolutely impeccable scores, but Dog Soldiers would be my second pick.
I just googled it. All right, we can chill for a second, but this is gonna time out. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next week.